Welcome to Living Multidimensionally, where we explore what it really means to be a soul having a human experience in a world that is far more magical, interconnected, and alive than we were ever taught to believe. I'm your host, Jillian, an Akashic Records channel, energy healer, and multidimensional guide. And this podcast is a space where we peel back the layers of the seen and unseen worlds. Here, we talk about the messy, beautiful, deeply human parts of life, and the moments that remind us we are ancient, infinite, and connected to something so much bigger. Here, I explore with you and guide you through the many layers of the spiritual journey. At times, I'm joined by friends, teachers, healers, and fellow travelers of the spiritual path. People who live with one foot in the physical world and one foot in the energetic realms, as we dive into the modalities, experiences, past lives, initiations, and everyday magic that shape us. This is a space for curiosity, embodiment, remembrance, and real conversations about what it means to navigate life as a multi-dimensional being, with humor, depth, and a whole lot of soul. So take a breath, open your heart, and let's journey in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Living Multidimensionally. So today's episode is really special because I'm sitting down with someone who has had a profound impact on my life and my spiritual journey. And she is my Akashic Records teacher, Suzie. So I found Suzie in one of those moments in my life where it felt like it was so meant to be. I was scrolling through Instagram one day and I found a post that I really resonated with. Something about it was just very different and it felt like my truth being reflected back to me. So I clicked on her page and I kept scrolling through and I just was like, I've never seen somebody talk this way before. This is like the way that I feel about things. So while I was scrolling, I found that she was offering a course. It was level 1, how to access your own Akashic Records, and I signed up right away. And through this work, very quickly, I realized that it was quite natural for me. I was able to channel information quite easily, and it felt very familiar, but also surprising. So I went through all the levels. I learned how to read for others, as well as how to heal and clear for others within the records. And then after the courses, I also had the opportunity to work with her one-on-one. And it was during a really pivotal time in my life. I was leaving a toxic relationship, moving back home to the farm, closing my personal training business, stepping fully into my spiritual business. Huge transition. And her guidance and support were so instrumental. I would have been so much harder without her. I don't know how I would have done it. She has an incredible gift of taking complex, multidimensional concepts, making them feel grounded, clear, accessible, an amazing teacher, and I love to refer to her as the OG of the Akashic Records. So I'm so excited to be having this conversation today. It's going to be powerful, expansive, of course, magical. So welcome, Suzie, to the podcast.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, and I hope I live up to the introduction because that was quite the introduction. But I would like to say, Gillian, that I've known you for many years and I've seen you go through this journey. And from my perspective, it's been beautiful to see you really owning that those beautiful spiritual gifts you have and stepping into that power and stepping behind them and really backing yourself. So for me, I'm like a proud mother being able to see you go through that journey and now all the wonderful work and service that you're doing in the world. So it's an honor to be here.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm so grateful to you and that means a lot. And you've seen the whole arc. So so yeah, it's nice to be a living testament of how worth it is because I can really say that now in my own life that like, okay, yeah, it was worth it. I see now. I see the point. Um
Yeah.
So yeah, so I like to get right into it. And the first question that I always ask, I always kick it off with, can you share with the listeners who you are beyond the labels, the soul behind
Ooh.
the work that you do?
Oh, the soul behind the work. I would say I am behind the label, the curious seeker. I think the curious seeker, I think I'm always trying to stay open. I'm always trying to stay open, not only to different concepts and ideas and things like that, but also to life. You
Mhm.
know, I think life is this amazing teacher. Doesn't mean it's easy, doesn't mean it's always fun, doesn't mean it's always the high highs, but I'm always trying to stay open to the situations I'm in, the people I'm meeting, every aspect that life has to offer. And I'm always trying to be curious and kind of feeling into what's this teaching me. So I would say I'm the curious seeker behind it all. And I definitely think that I will be forever the seeker
Yeah.
because I think no matter where you're at in your journey, no matter the amazing, mystical, wonderful experiences that you have, there's always more to learn, more to grow into, more to expand into, more to dissolve into.
Ooh.
It's this beautiful process that we go through and I just love the whole thing. I love the human life, I love the spiritual world, I love the whole experience.
Yes, I love that. I totally resonate with the Curious Seeker. When I was recording my solo episode, I asked myself the same question and I realized I'd never thought of it that way before. And I was like, why? Like, what do I even like about being here? And it was the same, like the curiosity and like almost like Earth is like a game. Like it's like, okay, I'm playing this game. Now, how do I figure out like how to win the game, you know? And
Yeah.
so I really love curiosity is such a it's such a fun way to look at it. And I think that's the point is to have fun. And so when you can approach it that way, I just think it makes the highs and the lows so much
Mhm.
more enjoyable because you
Yeah.
are learning. So you've obviously been doing this work on this journey for quite some time now. And I know you have a little bit of a background, like before you were kind of in the corporate world and everything before you entered into this world.
Mhm.
Do you have or do you remember like your first sort of multi-dimensional moment or when you sort of realized like, okay, this world is not what I was taught?
Well, I have quite a interesting upbringing. So I always say I was born awake and then I shut myself down. And what I mean by that is not that I'm some enlightened master descending upon the earth or anything like that, but
Well,
when I was when I was a child, I was very, very open to everything. I remember flying as a child and things like this. And I had these amazing experiences and some terrifying experiences as well as a child, which I know lots of your listeners will also have had. And through those experiences, a lot of us shut ourselves down and, try to fit into the boxes that society has for us. So, one thing that I am forever grateful for my soul for is that I was born into a very interesting family dynamic in respect of my mum was initiated into an Eastern spiritual tradition when she was, I think, 19. And, obviously she's much older than that now. But that meant I had this influence of Eastern teachings, yogic traditions, meditation, reincarnation, breath work, the soul, its journey, all of that. I also was confirmed in a Christian church, so I had a experience with church and that upbringing. And thankfully, the church that I went to is actually a very gentle, open um, community.
Mhm.
So I had that experience, and then I had my nana who was into channeling and automatic writing and mediumship and psychic work. So I had this beautiful exposure to all of these different things and an exposure that was not this is right and this is wrong, or
Yeah.
this is good and this is bad. it was just these are all different facets and different ways of perception. So, ways of seeing the world, ways of interacting with the world and the unseen forces,
Hmm.
and those aspects of ourselves that perhaps are not incarnated into physical reality. So, I was very lucky in that respect that I had that. And then I kind of went through the usual teenage years of, well, none of that really matters. What matters is, going to school, getting the grades, getting the job, getting the partner, having the kids, ticking all of the boxes. So I think it was more I shut myself down, or I have to say I tried to shut myself down because even during that time, I would have some amazing experiences that would really kind of re-tap into that. And then I'd be like, no, 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 I can't do that. I have to do this. It was kind of, I was under that, very, very false impression that I had to pick one or the other and that
Hmm.
I couldn't have a life on this earth that also took all of that beautiful experience into real consideration.
Hmm. Hmm. Cool. I love that you were exposed to all these different facets early on. I always, this has come up a lot with guests that they were very awake and aware when they were younger, and I always was like, well, mine didn't happen till later. And just as you were speaking, I was like, I wonder if I did have experiences, but I just don't remember them. So now you've got my
Yeah.
brain
It's
like
it's
going.
it's very common. It's very common for people because I think, there's so many people will, we're very close to our soul, we're very close to our essence when we're young. And, children will remember past lives up until the age of 7. Children will see into the astral realm very, very easily, and they'll be talking to their imaginary friend
Hmm.
or,
Hmm.
seeing fairies and things like that. And they'll tell their parents about it, and their parents will shut it down. Now, my parents never shut anything down, so I was very fortunate in that way. I shut it down
Yeah.
because it was a case of, you know, you have to pick. That was nobody told me that, but that was kind of what I was thinking is that, if I'm going to be successful in this world, I have to pick
Hmm.
which world I want to be in. And
Hmm.
not realizing, of course, that, it's all the same thing anyway.
Yeah. It's so funny how we just have these beliefs that we don't really realize we have, and nobody told us it had to be that way, but we decided it. And it's like, wait, I can just
Exactly.
decide something different and it can
Yes,
change.
exactly.
Yeah. So, and then did you, I guess, was there a clear transition point from when you kind of moved out of like, I have to pick to, oh, wow, I can do both?
Mhm. I'd love to say that I took, the first sign, the first nudge, but I definitely didn't. I was one of those people who had to go through very, very difficult health experiences and
Mhm.
basically be incapacitated to
Mm.
start listening. I had my guides coming in and, speaking to me. I've had a personal relationship with the Akashic Records for many, many years, even during this time through my meditation practice. And it was always, kind of trying to guide me in that direction. But, I knew best, me and my ego Bob, he knew best.
Bob.
And I love Bob. And, I thought I knew best and I thought I had to, do everything by myself and couldn't trust, couldn't surrender, couldn't do any of that. And I had all of these, these amazing experiences. I'll tell you one experience, if you don't mind me sharing. It
Yeah,
was
totally.
I went to one of my mum's spiritual meetings with the master of her lineage, and there's 30,000 people at this event, and I was helping my mum. My mum has multiple sclerosis, so she was in a wheelchair. So I was her helper. I'm not initiated into her specific tradition. And within the tradition, there's a belief that if you receive eye contact from the master, you receive this thing called darshan, which I know is popular in lots of Eastern traditions. Um, and this idea that by receiving this darshan, you're going to burn all this past life karma.
Interesting.
So even though I'm not initiated into this tradition, I'm like, well, that would be great. You know, any anything that helps you along the way in your human journey would love a bit of that. So on the last day of the talks, there's, as I said, 30,000 people at these talks each day. I went and, with my mum, and my mum said to me, and we hadn't discussed any of this beforehand, and she said, why don't you go up to the seating area, because she was over in the wheelchair area. I said, no, no, it's fine, I'll stay with you. And she said, no, I think you really should. So off I go, not knowing what to expect. It's very early in the morning, and I sit, and the master comes onto the stage, and he looks at me directly, and his entire being turned into this most beautiful golden light that you have ever seen. Like, he disappeared, his physical form disappears, and he just turns into the most radiant, beautiful golden light. I'm just completely overwhelmed with just complete love, union, oneness, like amazing mystical experience. And it's 6:30 in the morning, right? And I'm convinced that I'm hallucinating, because I'm like, what even is that? So he turns he turns his head to another direction, everything goes back to normal. And I'm like, right, that was a bit strange. 2 minutes later, same thing happens. And I'm like, right, really, now I'm not hallucinating. This is very, very strange. Now, at the end of the beautiful satsang that he gave, we all went for lunch. My mum, her friends, she's been in this tradition for years, so there's lots of people that we know. We all go for lunch, and this was on my mind. And I thought, right, I really want to share this with everybody, but everyone's going to think I'm crazy. There's probably going to, section me today. But I was really it was on my mind. So I shared it with them. We're all having lunch, and I expect it to be, deathly silence. I expect it to be, oh my God, what are you talking about? And everyone, okay, and carried on eating. And I was like, okay, so this is normal? Like, what is happening here? And like, I was totally dumbfounded. And obviously, years later, now knowing about the light body, the light grid, and all of that, I understand. But at the time, the fact that it didn't freak them out and they didn't say, oh, you're hallucinating, you're going crazy, really started to pique that curiosity. So I'd have these experiences like that. But
Mhm.
then I also had earthly based responsibilities. I had my job, I had my partner, my house, my kids, so it was all trying to kind of fit it all in. And then what happened is I got very, very sick. I had a period of a couple of years where I suffered from a stroke, I suffered from a brain infection. I had these really unfortunate times, and I was bedbound for quite a lot of it. Not completely bedbound, but I wasn't much use for anything. I wasn't working.
Mhm.
And then what happened is the term Akashic Records started to, show up everywhere. It'd be on a TV show, and then it'd be on a podcast. And I'd be like, okay, what is this? The curious seeker in me says,
Mhm.
I'm going to look into this. So I bought Linda Howe's first book, the orange one, How to Read the Akashic Records, and learnt about the Akashic Records, and thought, yeah, this is great conceptually, and did the prayer. And what I realized by going through her prayer process was, actually I'd been in communication with the Akashic Records for a very long time through my own spiritual practice. And
Mhm.
that I'd been going, asking questions, receiving answers, and it was the same thing. So I was like, oh, this is something I know. So
Cool.
what I did is I just started doing free readings for people. It wasn't a conscious decision of, okay, today I'm going to be an Akashic Records reader.
Mhm.
It was more, I wanted to see what it was like and how it was. And, I was not doing much else about it. And this was something I could do at home on my own. And, the rest is history. But that was how I got started. So those nudges had been there. I'd had these various different experiences, and, kind of trying to nudge me in that direction, but I didn't listen.
Mhm.
I thought I knew best. I had not mastered the art of surrender, and I definitely still haven't mastered the art of surrender. I always say it's the biggest lesson of my spiritual journey in this lifetime, is remembering consistently to surrender, surrender, surrender. Um, but I had to really be kind of put into that position where there was no wriggle room, there was no other option, and then it was just a case of surrendering and following that guidance and following that lead. And I remember having a conversation with my guides when I first started doing readings paid for.
Mhm.
And I said to them, look, I'll do it. I'll show up on, social media and stuff. And I said, I honestly don't think there's enough people in this world who want one of these sessions to pay my bills for a month. That was honestly what I said to them. I said, but, I'll do my bit, you do yours, and we'll see how we go. And here we are still all these years later.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
it was that nudges ignored so that they had to get much louder,
Hmm.
and then it was me following the threads of curiosity and being open again and actually taking the guidance and acting upon it rather than just going, okay, that's great, that's a beautiful mystical experience, and now I'm going to ignore it, which is what I had been doing up until that point.
Hmm. Interesting. Wow. Well, first of all, I can only imagine. I think I have so many points that I resonate just within my own way and with my own story. Like I mean, I would love to see a a man turn to gold, honestly. Putting that on my bucket list, but but like I have, those like really profound experiences where you're like, wait a second, like did I just was
Mhm.
I like I feel like that happens for a lot of people where they have those moments and then they're kind of like, all right, that was weird. Like I'm now
Mhm.
back to life, but you can't really go back after that
No,
happens.
no.
Um, and then the nudges, I think so many people I work with and come across, like, unfortunately, it does get to the position where they have become chronically ill or have a big injury, or I feel like that's a really common way that the guides intervene, and like get you to slow down. And I think it's
Mhm.
so easy for people to think like, oh, poor me, or why have this happened? Or, but like when you do surrender and learn how to see that it's happening for you, it makes listening
Mhm.
easier. I never had any chronic illness, but I mean, maybe if chronic fatigue counts, but at that point I was already pretty far into it, so I was like, okay, I know that I have to just surrender. Like I know
Yeah.
this now. So I yeah, it's very interesting how the nudges get louder and louder until it's like one of my friends refers to it as the two by four.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, all right, you aren't listening? Well, here you go.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I love that like the curiosity was like that's how you started doing it. It was the same for me with Reiki. I just was like, this is so cool. I want to do more of it. Like
Yeah.
I'll do it for free. And I wrote meditations and I just would like host groups at my house being like, who wants to hear what I wrote?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I think, yeah, following the curiosity and having fun with it is so
Mhm.
important. And I think a lot of people need to hear that. Like just try it out. Just go do it. You
Mhm.
don't have to be perfect first. And
Yes.
that's something that yeah, that a lot of people struggle with is like, well, but if I'm not good, it's like, well, how do you think you get good?
Exactly. And it's that, perfectionism's one of the biggest tools that the ego has that we uses against us. Bob loves to throw perfectionism in you. And the whole point of the spiritual journey is that you are this perfectly imperfect
Yes, you
being
already are perfect.
having,
Yes.
yeah. And you're also imperfect because your soul decided to come to earth and to experience limitations, to experience this, you know, dense physical form that is also a beautifully created form, you
Hmm.
know, that you came to experience these emotions that aren't always available, in higher dimensions. You wouldn't be able to experience the whole raft of emotions that we have. So you're perfect and you're imperfect through choice
Your
as
choice.
a soul
Yes.
coming through into this existence. So honoring that and being curious and being open to growing and evolving. I think I find it'll be a very sad day if I ever think to myself, oh, I'm there.
Yeah.
I want to always think there's still more room to grow, there's still more room to evolve and expand. And one of the things I love so much about the work with the Akashic Records is that you're always learning.
Yes.
You're always able to go deeper, you're always able to explore something new and try something new with it, and then just being open and curious with your own practice practice and where it can take you and how it can help you. So I think it's that recognition that we need, that there is no such thing as perfect.
Hmm.
There's no such thing as a perfect Akashic Records reader. There's no such thing as a perfect Reiki practitioner because we're all human, you
Hmm.
know? But
Hmm.
that's also beautiful. And
Hmm.
we're all just doing our best.
Totally. Doing our best. That was my one of my most profound moments was when I shifted from what am I doing wrong to I'm
Mhm.
doing my best. That was like a big internal shift, like one of those once again moments where once it happens, you can't go back because you're like, okay, it's different now.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's just moving you towards not only that self-acceptance, which is essential, but from self-acceptance to self-love. We're very hard on ourselves. We're very, we hold ourselves to extremely high standards, and we have this internal critic narrative that's constantly kind of putting us down and berating us. And it's the spiritual practices are supposed to help you reconnect to that soul, to that perfection within that peace, divine source that you are, that fractal of that divine source. And the more you can do that, then the more you can remember. So then you can be kinder to yourself, more accepting and more loving on
mhm,
your journey, and catching, okay, I've got this strange program running that is, the angry headmaster who wants to tell me off all the time. But I don't have to listen. I don't have to buy that. It's just something that's coming in, and I can choose what my beliefs are going to be. But it requires slowing down and recognizing these patterns within ourselves. And if you're like me, you don't want to slow down, you don't want to recognize these patterns. You have to be stopped by that 2x4 to slow down and recognize these patterns and then work from there. So, it's the human journey. It's an amazing adventure.
adventure, yes. And I love that you keep saying choose and choice because I feel like that's such an empowered language and it's true and like we chose to come here and experience this and as our human selves, like, yeah, we are imperfect, but it's by design. And I think that's so important. Like, I love perfectly imperfect because it's like every truth and the opposite truth. Like, you are perfect, and also you are imperfect, but that makes you perfect.
Exactly. Exactly. And the guides and the beings in the higher dimensions hold human incarnations in such high reverence. For a soul to choose to come here in the level of density that we're in, and the level of physicality with all of the illusions of separation and, all the different illusions that we're in. So we're here under under all of these different illusions and these different experiences, and the guides and the beings in the higher dimensions hold us in such reverence for that because it's such a courageous thing to do for a soul. Because you could stay up in the higher dimensions and be in bliss and unconditional love, and that part of you is still there. But
Mhm.
imagine the opportunity to come down here, and I always say to come down here and eat cake and swim
Yes.
in the sea and smell the flowers. Like, it's such an opportunity for a soul. It doesn't mean that it's easy, and it's not supposed to be easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that just because it can be difficult doesn't mean it isn't beautiful, and it isn't a beautiful adventure for the soul to have.
Yeah, I totally resonate. And I think it took me personally such a long time to experience that joy and that bliss and like how like really appreciate that and like as you're speaking I even feel like my heart warming because it's just like what like going through all that hard stuff it's so worth it when you do actually embody that realization like that you and I are talking about the curiosity and the adventure and loving it like to have that embodied and not just an idea it completely changes the human experience at least for myself like I when I'm in the hard times now, I don't get sucked in because I understand like this is part of it and it's beautiful too. And it I mean, there's still some emotions, of course, but it's not like I'm not attached to them so much. And I
And
think,
and the emotions that come up during that time are just as valid. They're just as
yeah,
valid as the joy and the bliss.
yeah,
The anger, the fear, the grief, the sadness, that's all part of the spiritual journey as well. And this is what the soul comes here to experience.
yes,
That's not to say that, when you have bad things happen in your life that, well, you chose it, so you have to get on with it. It's not that simple either.
yes,
There's
yeah,
other people's free will coming into play as well. But it's about us having that choice to say, okay, is this happening to me, or is this in some way happening for me? Is this challenge going to help me grow and expand? You
Hmm.
know? And if it is, even if it's difficult, it's a good thing from the soul's perspective because the soul's eternal. The soul is in those higher dimensions, quite happy, understanding everything that's going on, knows the big plan, knows you've got everything you need, and it's just there supporting you through the process. And
Yeah.
so are lots of different beings and guides as well. You've got this, everybody has this huge team of support that you can always lean into and get the guidance from, and take the nudges and pay attention to that intuition, that internal technology that's always operating. We just don't do it. We think we know better. We're very brain led.
Hmm.
It's getting out of the brain and into the heart. But by getting into the heart, you also have to get into the body.
Hmm.
And in the body, of course, is stored all of the stuff that you've been through, all of the repressed emotions, and it means facing that stuff. And that's where the hard work is. But you do that, as you know, Gillian, you do that, you turn that focus inwards and you start working through and processing that stuff through, then you'll see everything, even those hard times, as a blessing.
Totally. And also you learn, or at least I learned, like the bad emotions, like bad emotions, but
Mhm.
for understanding sake, we will say the bad emotions, even though technically there are no bad emotions, but the ones that are unpleasant to feel, the more you let yourself feel them, the more you like for me, I'm like, wow, like this is wild that I can feel this way. Like it's rather
Mhm.
than like being like this is bad, which I mean it's uncomfortable and not fun, but then at the same time, like, wow, I'm experiencing this
Mhm.
sensation or this emotion. And like now, anger doesn't come around very often, but when she does, I'm like, yeah, anger. Like
Yeah.
it's not a bad thing because it's like and it's like wow this is what this feels like. So I think yeah, it's a beautiful journey and so worth it. But I did want to, because you are the OG of the Akashic Records, it would be what's the word? Remiss if we didn't talk about them a little bit. And for the people here who are listening who maybe don't know about them, although if they've been following me, they at least know a little bit, but maybe just explaining your overview or however much in detail you want to go about this beautiful tool and
Mhm.
these beautiful friends that we have in these higher dimensions who can help us out.
Yeah, for sure. So I always say the Akashic Records is your soul's energetic memory since it left Source. So we're all part of Source. We're all these individual fractals of Source, and our souls break away from Source through choice, and we go on a little adventure. And that little adventure can take you into different star systems, it can take you into different universes, it can take you into a whole different host of realms, dimensions, and everything. And the Akashic Records are the record of that journey that you've taken, what your soul's experienced, what your soul wants to experience, what your soul is really kind of having these incarnations for in these various different dimensions. So that's what the Akashic Records are for. It's this energetic storage. So the Akashic Records are essentially the energetic storage of source consciousness itself. Your Akashic Records are your part of that. That's usually the easiest way to explain it to people. Now, that all sounds very out there and esoteric and wonderful. And lots of your listeners might be sat there going, okay, well, that sounds great, but like, how are these things going to help me in real life?
Mhm.
Like, that's great. Understanding all this stuff. How can this help me? Well, the Akashic Records are all about zooming out. So, getting out of the head and helping you to zoom out and seeing yourself from the level of the soul.
Mhm.
So understanding that perhaps, say you've got money issues in this lifetime and you've got blocks around money, and you might know, okay, well, I've got some stuff here because my mum and dad had this relationship to money and, all of this current lifetime stuff. And then you can zoom out with the Akashic Records and go, okay, and where does this start? And it might be that you took a vow of poverty in, 1100 AD. It might be that you've got some ancestral issues. It might be all of the above, but it's that ability to zoom out, not only where you're wounded and not only when you're having problems, but also your gifts and skills. Because through these incarnations, you develop certain gifts, you develop certain abilities and understanding those. But it's not equally, the Akashic Records aren't just about the past life stuff.
Hmm.
It's a way for you to communicate with your guides. So in the Akashic Records, we call them your masters, teachers, and loved ones. And this is a specific set of guides who work with you through the Akashic Records, who are there to help you every day. They're there to help you with your business. They're there to help you with your relationships, understanding things like that. So the Akashic Records are this living, multidimensional field
Hmm.
that you're able to cooperate with, to able to work with, and you're constantly feeding into it. Every decision you make, every action you take is information going in. And there's all this guidance coming our way, but we just don't receive it very well, you
Hmm.
know? So when you work with the Akashic Records, what you're doing is you're creating an open channel to not only send information into the records, but also to receive from and receive the guidance from those beautiful guides that you have in the Akashic Records. So hopefully that gives a overview without me going on and on and on about it.
I love the way you explain that. I feel like every time I hear you talk about it, you explain it, you expand like it's expanded since the last time I heard you you talk about it. And I feel the same way with my relationship with the records. It's always expanding, but I think I mean you said so many good things just in that very concise overview, but I think one thing that I wish more people allowed themselves to experience was a connection with their guides and their masters, teachers, and loved ones and their team. I think, especially in the healing space,
Mhm.
there's a lot of focus on, like you said, our ego, our mind likes to know it all, on the the nervous system regulation and the somatic practices and all that, and all of that is so important and so necessary
So
and
necessary.
100% like we have to do those things, but I think the guidance and the spiritual team and having that help and the energy healing and all of that, it just like completely changes the inner work and the inner journey, and it makes it so I don't even know the exact word to say, but it just helps so much to know you have that support and that guidance. And like even with the energy healing practices, it helps to clear things out. And so when you're doing those somatic practices or those embodiment practices, they have the ability to go so much deeper and
Mhm.
for things to shift so much more quickly. Like for
Mhm.
myself, when I did the healing and clearings for the first couple times, like my entire life changed because, of
Mhm.
course, because I was doing the root chakra and the sacral chakra. And, even my understanding of how important ancestral healing was and how much deeper it goes than what it can be, we perceive it to be. And so I really think that is such an important component and something that I really bring into my work is like that connection with the higher realms. And it really just helps you trust and surrender because
Mhm.
you you know what you're trusting and surrendering to. You're not just like, oh yeah, I surrender and like, okay, well, what am I surrendering to? If I don't know, that's scary. That's not, that doesn't feel nice.
Mhm.
Um, and like the intention of being, like on your highest timeline and in alignment with your soul, like your guides can help you with that. And I mean, they are helping you whether you hear it or not, but actually intentionally opening that field so that you can hear is so powerful. And I love you that like you touching on the past life stuff and how far back it can go. I also think you know, there are conversations out there about, well, the only moment that's real is the present. Yes, that's true, but everything that's unresolved from as far back as we can go is happening in the present. So when we go back and we heal that, it shifts the present moment. And
Absolutely.
so I think that it just makes such a big difference, and it's something that I hope more people, and I know more people are going to be opening up to in the future, and just like really opening those upper chakras to connect, because if you've never been there, you don't know what it's like, but also clearing out the body to experience. I just, yeah, I loved your explanation, and I just think that it's something that I want to share more about, because it's such an underutilized tool. If you want to break it down simply to like human mind, it is a tool that you could definitely use and it would help you.
Exactly, and it's available to everybody.
Hmm.
People have this preconceived idea that they have to, be perfect. And I do air quotes because you already are perfect. You're perfectly imperfect, as we've already discussed, but it's a tool that can help you wherever you're at on your spiritual journey. So people will say, well, I know I've got this inner child work to do. Can I still work my Akashic records? Of course you can, and they'll help you.
Hmm.
They'll help you because we've got a very, even with our clair senses, we're still in a very limited range of perception here on Earth. That's one of the kind of illusions that we come into, is this, very limited range of perception. So they have a better view,
Hmm.
so they're able to say, okay, well, see that this is happening, but why don't you try this and give you some guidance on this? So they're able to help you see that bigger picture. So that's where it's that objective soul level perspective. And,
Hmm.
you know, that's available to everybody. I never want anyone sitting there thinking, oh, well, I don't have a meditation practice, or I don't consider myself clairvoyant, or, I've never seen anything when I close my eyes, or, well, that person's so much further along in their journey. They're available to everybody. If there's a curiosity there, if you're like, oh, this sounds like something I'm curious about, that's what's to go with. It's to follow that curiosity, like we talked about at the start, and recognize that the Akashic records are available for everybody if they want to use them, and they're a tool on your spiritual journey, and they're just a way of you connecting to your soul, connecting to those higher guides, and being able to remember who you truly are in
Hmm.
your essence.
Yes. And I think that's something that I definitely had to learn along my journey. As soon as you ask, it's given, but it's not in the way that our ego mind thinks it's going to happen. And so everything that happens is happening for you. And I know a lot of the girls I'm working, or a couple at least right now, they're in this phase of understanding, like, okay, when something's challenging, I don't have to fix it or change it. I just have to go through it and learn from it because it's happening for me. And feeling lower emotions doesn't make me low vibration. That is such
Oh yeah.
a,
Oh,
a cry. Like, but people believe that. They're like, oh, if I'm feeling sad, I'm gonna lower my vibration. And I have a few girls right now that are like realizing, wait, no, I'm still connected to my higher self. I'm still high vibrational, and this is part of it. And that is such a important and profound part of like a stage, I guess you could say, people go through. But no matter what is happening, it's all happening for you, and you are always supported. You can't cut it off, you know.
yeah, there's nothing you can do to break the connection. Your guides never get mad with you, they don't fall out with you. You can never speak to them for 5 years and come back and they'll still be there with open arms to love you and to support you. And these narratives that fly around the spiritual community about, if you feel anger, that means you're low vibrational, and it's also disembodied,
Yeah.
you know, and it's very, very important to remember that you're only going to be able to go up and have these higher dimensional, multi-dimensional experiences in proportion to how grounded you are, how embodied you are.
Hmm.
It's the spiritual journey is not trying to escape the body, although that's sometimes how it's sold to people. It's not trying to escape the human experience. It's trying to fully be in the human experience whilst also remembering
Hmm.
that you are a soul having this human experience. So, how can you bring that unconditional love that your soul is and is connected to into your everyday physical reality? So, when you have someone come to you and maybe, it's what would be an argument. Okay, well, how are you showing up at that? Are you reacting? Are you responding? So it's about this yes, all of these higher dimensions are amazing and wonderful. And, I'm very blessed that I get to work in them all of the time.
Mhm.
But from that work, how are you showing up in your everyday reality? And sometimes showing up in your everyday reality means experiencing grief. Sometimes it means experiencing anger. And that doesn't mean that it's invalid or unspiritual. It's part of the journey.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's acknowledging that and allowing that to happen. And, maybe finding ways to help support you through the period of anger, the period of grief, the period of sadness that you're experiencing. And spiritual tools can absolutely help you, but not avoiding it and not repressing it and not saying, oh, well, now I'm not spiritual anymore. You're spiritual because you exist. You
Yes.
know, it,
I
it
think
it's not about only being in those higher emotions.
totally. I think learning to feel, truly feel emotions is one of the hardest parts of the spiritual journey and also one of the hardest parts to teach as a teacher. Like teaching
Yes, for
people
sure.
how to feel emotions because people think they're feeling emotions all the time, but they're not. They're just thinking them and like actually feeling them is so different and change like it's just it makes things so much easier when you learn how to do that.
Yeah.
But
But
I
it's because our society is so brain oriented,
yeah, yeah,
and we tend to be so in our minds, in our intellect, and there's nothing wrong with intellects, there's nothing wrong with studying, there's nothing wrong with that. But at some point, you're going to have to get into that body. You're going to
yeah,
have to get in connection to that body and the wisdom that the body has.
yes,
The body is not separate from your spiritual journey. It's not the boring material part of your spiritual journey. It holds such wisdom,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and you've got to get into it. And part of getting into it means feeling the feelings, and that's hard because it's not a process of the brain. You can understand why you're experiencing certain feelings, you can think about it, you can ruminate for hours about why you're feeling a certain way, but that's very different to actually being in it and actually learning how to alchemize, learning how to transmute, which is what you're doing when you allow yourself to be in the feelings and to process the feelings.
oh, it's so like I have moments I remember where I resisted an emotion for weeks and then finally I just was like, all right, what are we feeling? What is this?
Mhm.
And then I felt it and then the next morning, poof, I'm fine. And I'm like, oh,
Exactly.
it was that. Okay. And the more I did that and practiced that, the easier it got and the less I resisted. The more I was just like, all right,
Exactly.
what is it? And then we just feel it and we move along and it's all good. But it takes, yeah, it takes time. It takes practice. But
It does.
anyways, so I've been loving this conversation. I feel like there's just when I get talking about this stuff, I could talk for hours because it's just so fun. But I guess to start to close things up, if you could give an advice to someone about like getting started or how could they make a change like today, tomorrow, what would be your piece of advice for someone who is curious?
Mhm. Okay. Absolute best advice for anyone getting started is start introducing pockets of neutral time into your day,
Hmm.
right? So, what I mean by neutral time is a time where you're not consuming something,
Hmm.
okay? And you're not actively working on something. So this could be going for a walk in nature with no headphones. This could be sitting and drinking your coffee first thing in the morning without checking your phone. Okay. The reason introducing pockets of neutral time are so important is because number one, it gives you an opportunity to just check in with yourself. What are you feeling? What programs, what thoughts are coming in? Just checking in with how you are also starts to make space for the guides to be able to contact you. Our world is so busy. You never have to be bored, and boredom is like the gateway into creativity. Yeah. But we don't give ourselves those opportunities of boredom, of slowing everything right down essentially doing the exact opposite of what the world tells you, which is speed everything up, do everything faster, be more efficient, use these tools for efficiency. Do the opposite, slow everything right down and take those pockets of neutral time so that you're open to receive the guidance. And you might not receive anything the first couple of times that you do this, but then maybe you're having your morning coffee and you feel a drop of inspiration coming in,
Hmm.
or you feel an answer to a question that you've perhaps been mulling over for a couple of days drops in. It's opening that connection to be able to receive that guidance. And you do that through that consistent practice of little pockets of neutral time. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't, change your day. It's just about being more aware of, okay, am I just looking for a distraction or can I just sit with myself? You get to know yourself a lot better. You get to know what flavor your ego is coming in at for that day. You get to know what those feelings are. And that's that process. And that's kind of the starting point of that journey of taking that journey inwards.
Hmm. Hmm. So good. So important. Yeah. And pockets. I like that you said that because I think when people think about surrendering or going in, it's like overwhelming because it's like, I have to rest. It's like, it just has to be a little rest to start, and then you'll start to like it, and then it will be longer. But
Exactly, because people are told that you need these really complex 3 hour long morning routines, 3 hour long evening routines, and you've got to get enough protein, water, steps in, do all of these things. You can get lost online and you'd literally spend all day on your morning routine if you followed all of that stuff. And
yep.
but your body's going to tell you what you need. But
Hmm.
if you're not taking time out to listen to it and you're not taking that neutral time to start working with your internal technology that every single person has,
Hmm.
then it's not able to. And you're going to take that advice from outside of you. It's like start taking the advice from inside and see what happens, see the magic it can bring through for you.
Totally. My biggest changing moment when 'cause when I moved out, which you were here for all of it, but when I moved out to the country after I left my ex and I had space for myself finally, I made the decision moving forward, I'm only listening to my body. I'm not doing anything my body doesn't want me to do. I'm only listening. And it was very hard at times, but boy, did it pay off. And it was just
Yeah.
like that, like, if my body wants to sleep, I sleep. Like I'm only listening. And now it's like I'm at a place where I can't not listen to it. Like I can't do something I don't want to do. I physically can't. But
Which is a beautiful place to get to,
yes,
and actually being able to hear the wisdom and trust the wisdom and move forward in alignment to that. Because how are you going to live a soul aligned life if you're not spending any time getting in alignment to your soul?
yes. Oh, that was mic drop moment. So true though. So true. If you could, and I mean, you probably do on some level, but if you could speak to the version of you that was ignoring the nudges and wanting to do it all themselves and right, what would you say to her?
I would say understand the stage that you're going through now is a valid part of the process.
Oh.
Because I think that part of the process was necessary and it was valid, but you're not going to get stuck there. This isn't your life forever, you
Hmm.
know? So
Hmm.
learn from the process, embrace the lessons and embrace the challenges, and start trusting yourself more. Because I had those nudges, I had those intuitions, and I just ignored them. But
Hmm.
I would never invalidate any experience that I've had in my life, and I've had some great experiences. I've had some awful experiences, like every human has,
Hmm.
but they were all valid and they all brought something to the experience and a lesson to the table.
Ugh, I love that. I feel like there are some people that need to hear that for where they are right now. And even looking back, right? People hold so much shame, or if I'd done that. And it's like, no, it was all part of it. It was all meant to happen. And I love that you said valid, like, great word. But even for the people who are listening who are maybe in those, uh, the two by four moments, or maybe it's not quite a two by four, maybe, but suffering of some sort. this is where it's valid. It's not going to be forever, you know? And
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
that that's something that is it might feel like it's going to be forever, but it's not going to be.
This too shall pass.
Yes, absolutely. So, okay, so we're gonna do a quick little like lightning round.
Okay.
And so I mean if it's not quick, there's no mean head mistress here.
Okay.
Um, but just a few fun questions to kind of close things up. Um, well, I know I kind of ran this one by you, but you don't know your sun, moon, and rising, or do you know?
No, I'm not very up to date on astrology, I have to confess. I know I'm a Libra, but I don't
Okay.
know anything other than that. But I'm a Libra, so October the 8th
Okay.
was me.
And and you're a projector, which we didn't really go deep
Yes.
into that, but I have I attract projectors. So for my
Mhm.
projector girlies, Susie is also a
Yes.
projector.
I am. I'm a 6'2" projector.
Okay, okay. And do you know your authority? Like I'm spleen.
Splenic.
Okay, same.
Yes, splenic. And that was a hard one because that's very body based. So you
Yes,
really have to get into the body to feel the splenic nudges and
yes.
authority
It's
working.
that one I'm getting better at it with like the yes moment, like when it's because that one, if you know it's if you don't listen right away, then the mind starts to come in, and yeah,
Oh, yes,
definitely getting better, but trusting that initial yes or no, it's
mhm,
it takes practice, but
for sure.
I'm a 3/5, so I'm a trial and error
Mhm.
girl. Um, do you have I'm well, the next question is spirit guides, loud or subtle, but I think we already know the answer to that.
Very loud. Very loud.
Very loud. Do you have a past life that you resonate with or that you like remember is especially important to you?
No.
No.
And I don't mean that I don't have any past lives. I
Hmm.
just mean that I think now I'm at the point that I've integrated what I need from the
Hmm.
past lives and
Hmm.
the other lives and the parallel lives and all the different versions. And my focus is and my resonance is with this lifetime and this timeline. I'm very, very focused on this now.
Yes, I love that. I feel the same. I don't have a lot of memories from my past lives, and I think it's because I don't really need them right now. But
Like,
yeah, but I am very fascinated by them all of the same, and the galactic stuff, as you know. Um, what is the most random sign that the universe has, or the guides have ever sent you?
oh wow, the most random. Honestly, I think I'm never shocked by the randomness with the guides. You know, it can be a recommendation from a friend for a book, and there's the answer of the question. Or I remember the most random when I wasn't kind of in the spiritual world. I wasn't really looking for signs and synchronicities or anything like that. And I remember I was working with this client, and there was a particular bit of structuring and agreements and things that we were trying to work out. And I remember being in the shower of all places, and all of a sudden, just the inspiration dropping in, and I had to jump out of the shower and write down this answer, and then, went in, presented it, and it was exactly correct. But I think the more you're open to the signs, the more you'll see how often they're coming in,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
we expect it to be a certain way. And, I always remember there was a time where, I'm always asking in my Akashic Records, what does my body need this week? What spiritual practices are going to help me best this week? And my guide said to me, no caffeine. Like it would be good if you could avoid caffeine for a week, which, I love my tea. I'm British. We drink tea all day. And I was like, oh, I've definitely got that wrong. The isn't that's not correct at all. And then the next morning I woke up and I physically felt nauseous at a cup of tea, and it only lasted sort of 4 or 5 days, but it was like, okay, I get the point. I'm supposed to be, laying off the caffeine for a bit. I probably was drinking a bit too much, and they were like, you could really do with backing it off a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So many different ways.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Oh man, lately I've been getting up at 4 in the morning and like
Oh,
filming things because I'm like, it's here, it's now. Okay, here we go.
yeah,
Like it could have came at a different time, but it's okay. I will take the
yes,
inspiration now.
yeah.
And then last question. If you could visit a realm or a dimension tonight in a dream, where would you go?
I'd stay on Earth. I'd
Oh.
I'd stay on Earth. I think I would stay on Earth, and I would go. Where would I go? Where have I always? I know where I'd go. I'd go to India, or I'd go to Sri Lanka. Both, and I would go and see the elephants. And
Oh,
that would be all I would want to do. I love the other realms. I love higher dimensions. I love experiencing all of that. But I'd want to take the opportunity to explore more of Earth and places that I haven't been able to
I
go
love
to.
that.
Yeah,
Yes, I love that. Oh, that's such a good answer. It's like, where do I want to most go on Earth? That's where I'd go.
yeah,
Such
for sure.
it has me now. I'm like, where would I go?
Well, it's so hard because there's so many beautiful places, and I've just never gotten to them. And I think, with my background and, my upbringing with the Eastern traditions, I'd love to go and, visit the different religious temples and
Hmm.
all of the different sacred sites that are out there. So that would
Hmm.
be, if I could move myself to somewhere, that would have to be it. Yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
so cool. Amazing. Oh, well, this has been so fun and we've covered so much and I'm so grateful to you for being here. Um, I guess first if you could share with the listeners where they can find you because we touched on a couple of things. We kind of, parallel lives was in there and there's little bits and pieces, but I know that you share all about all of this in different places. So where can we find you?
Okay, so I definitely think if your listeners are curious about, spiritual journey, spiritual awakening, Akashic Records, all of that, podcast is probably the best place. So I have a podcast called The Wisdom from the Akasha, where I share about the Akashic Records. I share about my own spiritual journey and what I'm learning through my work with the Akashic Records, and also, deep dive into, specific weird and wonderful esoteric topics and teachings. So that tends to be I find it a good place to really sort of dip your toes into the topics. I'm on, social media, so I'm on Instagram. I'm on YouTube, and I'm getting more on YouTube. So that's there. And then, of course, I have my website, and there's a blog on my website where I go into lots of different topics. So I'm kind of everywhere a little bit. But I think the podcast is a great starting place, and you can take me with you on your dog walk or while you're cleaning the house, and just do a deep dive into a topic. And I hope that I explain those topics well. And you can always submit questions for the podcast as well. I do listeners' questions as well, which is really fun. So that I think is probably the primary place to get some more from me.
Yes, definitely. I definitely recommend checking out Susie's podcast. She is a wealth of information about all the other curious humans out there who want to know about all the things like myself. You won't be disappointed if you check out Susie's work. So, yes, thank you so much for being here today, Suzie. And to the listeners, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought. And yeah, drop your questions here. Go drop your questions on Susie's podcast. And yeah, just thank you so much for being here, Suzie.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's been great to chat.
You bet. All right. We'll see you later. Thank you for sharing this space with me today. If something in this episode resonated, let it land. You don't need to understand it all right now. Integration happens in its own time. You'll find ways to connect and explore working together in the show notes, and you're always welcome to reach out if you feel ready to go deeper. Remember, you don't have to transcend your humanity to be spiritual. Your lived experience is the initiation. Until next time, stay curious, stay embodied, and keep living multidimensionally. May your days play out for the highest good. Namaste.